During our teenage years, we had lots of friends, gathered from the 3 neighborhoods and surrounding areas. Everybody wanted to party. We'd go cruising, meet at the drive-in movie, or camp out on Galveston Beach. Or we'd just hang out being cool. We had our music, which we played long and loud. And there was our social companion, marijuana. Before you judge, you have to realize that this was the culture I grew up in, and I never did anything stronger. It was hip huggers and bell-bottom jeans with halter tops, clodhopper shoes, all kinds of beads and leather. Gas was 35 cents a gallon and soft drinks were a dime. We were having good times with good friends. One night we were sitting outside. Judy and I sat on the hood of the car as Roy and a neighbor stood by. We were talking hippie just for kicks, saying things like cool man, freak me out, you're tripping man, I dig it, and that's far out. And then we would just laugh and laugh. They were also passing around a joint. I didn't want it, but Judy kept pressing it on me until I took it and pretended to take a hit. Our house and our neighbor's house were set about 10 feet apart. Suddenly, at roof level between the 2 houses, I heard a distinctive male voice say, "Pictures." I strained my eyes into the darkness up toward this voice as the others kept laughing and talking. Didn't they hear it? When I asked the others, they behaved as if they could not hear me. Straining against some invisible force, I barely managed to nudge Judy. She turned only briefly. In frustration, I asked, "Did anyone hear someone say, 'pictures'?" Nobody answered me. After a brief pause, the same distinct male voice answered with a simple, "No." Playing along, I shrugged. "Oh, okay." Later, I told Judy what I had heard and asked if she had heard me. She said no, but remembered I had nudged her. It must have been because I was within their field where I could hear them and the others couldn't. This brings me to a time when I got myself in serious trouble after smoking some pot, which was another name for marijuana. I do not condone the use of any drugs. It is a waste of life. On this fateful night, it was my sister, a neighbor who was enamored with my sister and me. We were harmlessly hanging out in the dark and deserted neighborhood. The neighbor, a hardcore committed marijuana freak, pulled out one huge, fat joint. Kids would take pride in how fast, how thick, how smooth, or how long they could roll one. But nobody could roll them like he could. Indisputably, he was the king. With King dragging on one end, he lit this monstrosity as it snapped, crackled, and popped. Exploding seeds went off like miniature fireworks. The whole effect looked like a forest aglow in flames. As I watched, I thought, this is how I will describe it someday when I write my story. Would that be okay? I asked those above. I was probably about 14. This was the only time I had any inkling of writing a book. The idea came out of the blue and faded back into it. With cheeks puffed and bulging with smoke, King passed the joint to his complying love interest, Judy. Now, legally speaking, I do not remember if I was coerced that night into this ruinous act, but the consequence was almost immediate. After one puff, my body went into violent abduction. The chemical cruised through my veins like a lethal toxin. Tremors shook me. Judy saw my distress and kindly led me home through a dreamy and frightening world. It must have been laced with something. I had never had this reaction before. Putting myself to bed, in agony, I shivered and tossed. The whole unfortunate situation provoked one of my more earnest and sincere religious revivals. Dear God, I prayed, please help me, and I swear I'll never smoke again. And I didn't. I was too scared to. My predicament was so dire that even my dad took notice and came to the door to ask if I was okay. Well, the next thing I knew, I was on a familiar table, not part of the trip. My self-diagnosis was right. My nerves were under attack. The beings projected my sister's image to me, and my thoughts went to her and her involvement in my plight. One of the 2 beings was deployed to her rescue. She would later mention that although she saw no problem continuing to smoke, she did receive a strong impression not to. At 17 and 6 feet 7, Roy had a long waist and a 42 inches chest. His imploring green eyes were now set beneath the prominent brow of a prehistoric caveman. And despite his insecurities, the girls thought he was gorgeous. Roy's true love would be Diane. She was a petite blonde from a nearby neighborhood. She and Roy made a cute couple with Roy towering over her. She was bubbly, bouncy, top-heavy, and squealed a lot, to Roy's heart's delight. Diane moved in, and she and Roy married. One day, Diane ran into the house and straight for my room. "Someone outside wants to meet you," she said. "Me?" I asked. "Yeah, he says he saw you before, but calls you Ginger," she giggled. Who in the world could it be, I wondered. Following the bouncy Diane, we dashed across the yard to the waiting car, and I hopped into the back seat with my mystery date. He was cute, with dark hair and complexion, an immediate attraction. I eyed him, and he eyed me. His name was Mark, an American Indian and recent arrival to our world from Florida. He talked tough and thought he could whip anybody because he was a boxer. He was also a big flirt. No one had ever made me feel the way he did, and to everyone's detriment, I would fall for him. I can't truthfully call it love because at 16, I was way too young to know what that meant. During the second summer that Mark and I were together, I became pregnant. Soon, Diane and Roy were expecting also. But because Mark had trouble getting a birth certificate, our marriage was delayed. He didn't know that his stepfather had adopted him and changed his last name. Diane became friends with Judy and me, and one day Diane asked if I wanted her to streak my hair. Hair coloring was kind of new back then. Overbaked, my dark hair had thick white streaks on one side and thin white streaks on the other side. I looked like a crazy skunk. A part of me thinks she did it on purpose, the little stinker. After a few days, the aliens picked me up, and boy, were they perplexed. What happened here? They examined me and examined me again and just couldn't find anything wrong. They concluded that I must have been sick and it caused my hair to turn white. They had seen humans' hair turn white before during severe episodes of trauma. They concluded that whatever it was, I seemed to be okay now. Diane's mother was nice. She came to pick me up one day to take me shopping for the baby. She explained that when she was young and pregnant with Diane, a woman had taken her shopping for baby items. This woman made her promise that someday she would return the favor by helping another young pregnant mother. That young mother was me. Diane's mother asked me to promise that someday I too would purchase baby items for a pregnant woman. We arrived at a baby store where I was free to spend $80, a lot in those days. I have since returned the favor several times over, and each time I do, I tell the new recipient this story and ask that they too do the same. This was an early concept of paying it forward. When I told Mother my due date was the end of December, she was adamant, "You're not going to have that baby in December. It's going to be born on January 24th. My first grandchild has to be born on my birthday." On Friday evening of January 23rd, I was a month overdue and at the drive-in movies. My back began killing me and I could not get comfortable. But what does a 17-year-old know about back labor? Scooting this way and that in the truck to no avail, I got out to walk around. Observing me rubbing my back and my facial contortions of pain, an older gentleman in a nearby vehicle inquired of my condition. "When is the baby due?" he asked. "It was due in December," I replied. He smiled and kept a watch. Better than the movie, I guess. I became so uncomfortable that I had them take me home. That night, I tossed and drifting in and out of sleep. The contractions slowed, but broke with a vengeance the next morning. Everyone had given up on me ever giving birth. There wasn't a soul around. Contractions were coming one after the other as I paced the hall wondering what to do. I decided to call Diane's mother. She rushed me to the hospital. Meanwhile, my mother had stated over coffee to her friend, "Well, my grandchild will be born today. It's my birthday." During labor, they tried a spinal tap, but instead, they punctured my spinal fluid and liquid began to leak. By the next morning, it felt like my head would explode. It was the worst headache of my life. There was so much pressure that I was blowing blood out of my nose and my vision was extremely blurry. In those days, the hospitals didn't bring the baby into the rooms, and I was too ill to go see her. We were missing a very important time for bonding. After 5 days of suffering, the decision was made to put fluid back in my spine. This was a brand new technique. There was a risk of being paralyzed, and I had to sign a waiver releasing them from harm. 2 young men set me up on an examination table and stood behind me with my back bent over slightly. Their lack of confidence was evident. They instructed me to let them know if I felt any tingling or numbness in my legs, and away they went. I immediately felt tingling in my left leg and told them. Suddenly, my familiar gray popped into the room right in front of me. I was pleased to see him. His demeanor was pleasant, and he walked around the table to where the two young men were standing, now frozen. The gray took a look and repositioned the young surgeon's hand and the device in my spine and told him, "Right here," and left. We were reanimated and the tingling was gone. The second surgeon observing the procedure wanted to stop because I reported tingling, but the surgeon holding the now repositioned device felt so confident that he decided to add even more fluid. This shows that aliens can and do help surgeons. In fact, grays are surgeons. After the baby was born, Mark and I moved in together in another neighborhood in the area, a short distance from my home. This concludes chapter